What's up, house groups? I can't believe this is our last normal night of 2023. Time flies when you're having fun, I guess. Right now, we're in the middle of a Christmas series called The Promise of Peace. And this week, we're looking at the story of Hagar and Elroy, which in my mind sounds like a couple living in Appalachia who makes moonshine together in the woods behind their house. But that's not it, all right? Elroy is spelled differently. And in this story, it's Hagar, the Egyptian slave girl, who belonged to Abraham and Sarah, and then was used by them to get pregnant since Sarah was barren. And Abraham and Sarah had, at some point in a decade of frustration and trying and waiting and hoping and not seeing their dreams come true, decided that if God's 10-year-old promise to them of a son was going to happen, they needed to take matters into their own hands. Shockingly, though, like who could have seen this coming, their plan didn't work out very well. I mean, Hagar did, in fact, get pregnant, but it created a conflict between her and Sarah, because how could it not? And then it ended up in a spot where Sarah got so angry at Hagar that she abused her very seriously. The Old Testament word for it means like harshly, probably verbally and relationally, possibly even physically. And it got so awful that Hagar ran away. And then ultimately, when she encounters Elroy, she's by a place called Shur, which means absolutely nothing to most of us, but it means a lot to the original readers. Shur literally means the wall. Why? Well, it was a desert so desolate and foreboding, and crossing it was so likely to end in death that it was basically the wall that protected Egypt from being attacked from that side. Like even well-stocked armies wouldn't cross it. So here's Hagar, completely alone, destined to die of thirst before she can scale the wall. That is, if something else doesn't kill her first. And one thing we can be sure of, by the time she gets here, like 100 miles away from where she left and a wilderness away from survival, like one thing we know for a fact is that whatever dreams she had for that baby growing inside her belly, whatever vision she had for what her life might look like, they're all shriveling up and dying inside her in despair. Her only option is setting in pretty heavy as she sits there, abandoned by the world. In the awesome message Jamie gave on Sunday about Hagar's story, she laid out 4 adjectives to describe her condition. She's sitting there as a woman who's been used, abused, refused, and confused. She's been treated as less than human and used by people who should have loved her and treated her better. She's been abused by those same people, refused and rejected by them, and she's now confused about what to do and where to go. She's got a wall in front of her and weeping behind her, and then God shows up and he calls her by name, which again might not be shocking to any of us, but you guys, it's the only time in all of ancient literature, like not just the Old Testament, but the Talmud, the Atrahasis, the Epic of Gilgamesh, the Enuma Elish, the Ludlul Bel Nemequi, and more, all of it. This is the only time ever a deity addresses a woman by her name, which is so cool on multiple levels. But I think for all of us, maybe the coolest thing is this. There are times when we feel lost and hopeless, when the past is painful and the future is fraught, when we are abandoned and alone. When we relate to Hagar, we look at our stories and we feel used, abused, refused, and confused, or some combination of all of those. But check it out. Sometimes when we're out looking for hope, we find God out looking for us. Like sometimes when we're out looking for hope, we find God out looking for us, and we realize our despair didn't create as much distance between us and him as we thought. Like that's what Hagar discovered. And she realized, wow, God sees me. And so she called God Elroy. She said, I have seen the one who sees me. And Elroy means not just the God who sees, but the God who sees me. Elroy, the God who sees me. You guys, God sees you, like right where you are. And he sees and has a future for you you can't always see for yourself. So this Christmas, as we navigate the very real brokenness of our lives and our world, my prayer is we'd all remember that. Because it's so tempting when everything feels shattered all around us to just give up, curl up, and quit living while we're still alive after we decide there's no way forward. But when we remember, God isn't just real in a distant sense, but he's real in an up close and personal one, and he sees us. We can live while we're alive, despite life's imperfections. I think one of the most fascinating aspects of the life of Jesus is how often the gospel accounts, like Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John, tell us Jesus saw. Like Jesus saw the lepers. Jesus saw the blind man. Jesus saw the sick lady. Jesus saw the hurting and the vulnerable and the children and the people nobody else saw. Jesus saw them, and he sees you and he loves you no matter where you're at or what your story may be. So that means this Christmas and every day, hope is real. As Jamie said Sunday, Elroy, the God who sees me, takes the used and makes them renewed, the abused and makes them cherished, the refused and makes them accepted, the confused and makes them enlightened. He sees us, and that changes everything.